All right, today we are going to be dividing fractions. So it's going to be pretty similar to when we multiplied fractions. Remember when we multiply and divide, we don't have to find common denominators. When we add and subtract, we need to make sure that these denominators, or the bottom number in the fraction, are the same. And that can be a little complicated sometimes, but when we're dividing fractions or multiplying fractions, we don't have to do that. We can just multiply straight across. If we're multiplying and dividing, we've got one little extra step. Okay, so last year you learned the saying KFC for dividing, and that was keep, flip, change. Okay, so that's a cute little way to remember the steps for dividing fractions. So what does that really mean? So keep has to do with the first fraction, so you're going to keep it, you just leave it alone. The flip is the second fraction. So instead of 1 over 3, it's going to be 3 over 1. And the change is multiplication. So notice, in the original, it said 2/3 divided by 1/3. I changed it to multiplication, and then I flipped the second fraction. So the keep is the first fraction. And the flip is the second fraction. And the change is division into multiplication. So basically, we're never going to divide the numbers that we see. We are going to flip and multiply. Okay, so dividing by 1/3 is the same as multiplying by 3. So now that we've got multiplication set up, we're just going to follow the same procedures that we've been following and multiply straight across. So 2 times 3 is 6, and 3 times 1 is 3. And of course I would simplify that, and 6 over 3 is just a whole number 2. Now, when I look at number 2, I want to keep flip change as soon as I see division. So I'm going to leave the first fraction alone, that's my keep. I'm going to flip my second fraction. So it's 2 over 1. And I change division to multiplication. So in other words, dividing by 1/2 is the same as multiplying by 2. Now, technically, you are allowed to divide straight across, and 10 divided by 1 is 10, but 7 divided by 2 is not such a nice number. And so to avoid those ugly numbers that we get from dividing things that don't go in evenly, we use the inverse function, which is multiplication. Okay, and this is called your reciprocal. It flips the second fraction. Now we can just multiply straight across like we're used to. So 10 times 2 is 20, and then 7 times 1 is 7. All right, we need to simplify. So we ask ourselves, how many times does 7 fit into 20? And that would be twice. That puts us at 14. And then we're going to have a remainder. Our remainder is still always talking about the same denominator, so sevenths. So if we took 2 sevenths out of 20, that puts us at 14. So the remainder to get to 20 would be 6, because there's 6 left over. So my final answer is 2 6/7. All right, number 3. So we come to a division problem that does not have 2 fractions. It's got 1 fraction and then a whole number. So how do we handle that? So just like we've been doing in class with all our other operations, we can quickly change a whole number into a fraction just by putting it over 1. Now it looks just like numbers 1 and 2. So I'm going to keep flip change. So I'm going to leave 5/4 alone. I'm going to flip 2 over 1, so it becomes 1/2. And I'm multiplying. So notice, dividing by 2 is the same as multiplying by 1/2. Dividing by 2 is the same as multiplying by 1/2. So all we have to do is flip and multiply. So straight across, I'm going to get 5 on the top. I'm going to get 8 on the bottom. And then this problem is great. We don't need to simplify anything. So it's 5/8. All right. So what happens when we get to a problem like number 4? So just like in multiplication, we can't simply work with the fractions and then work with the whole numbers. We need to take this whole number and put it into the fraction. So basically we need to convert a mixed number into an improper fraction. So we talked about this whole right here. If we're going to express it in thirds, this whole number 1 is the same as 3/3. So if I took that 3/3 and I combined it with this 2/3, it's going to give me 5/3. I'm going to leave everything else the same for now. So I've converted 1 2/3 into an improper fraction, and it's 5/3. The other way we talked about doing that is you multiply these two numbers, so it's 1 times 3, and then add that to the top. So 1 times 3 is 3. Add the 2. There's my new top number or numerator of 5. Okay, now I can't just go straight across because this is still division, so I need to flip and multiply. So I'm going to leave the 5/3. It becomes multiplication. Dividing by a half is the same as multiplying by 2. Okay, and if you don't believe me, let's look at a calculator real quick. So we know that half is 0.5, so if we just want to put that in our calculator, let's take an easy number like 10, and let's divide it by 0.5. So 10 divided by 0.5, or 10 divided by a half, is 20. Just like 10 times 2 is 20. So dividing by a half is the same as multiplying by 2. So that's why this works. So instead of using the division, we're going to change it to multiplication and flip straight across now. We're going to get 10 on the top, 3 on the bottom. As always, we need to simplify. So 3 is going to go into 10 3 times, which puts us at 9. And if we're at 9, we have 1 left over. So my final answer is 3 1/3. All right, so these last two questions have two mixed numbers. So just like we converted this mixed number to an improper fraction, we need to do that to every single one of these before we can even worry about keep, flip, change. All right, so no mixed numbers. We're not dividing the mixed numbers. We're going to turn these into improper fractions. So let's start there. So right here, we're going to do 2 times 4, and that's 8. We're going to add it to the top. So 8 plus 3 gives me 11/4. Bring down division. Same thing here. 1 times 4 is 4. Add it to the top. And I get 7/4. So 2 3/4 is the same as 11/4, and 1 3/4 is the same as 7/4. So now I have something I can work with. I'm going to keep, flip, change. So I'm going to keep 11/4, change this to multiplication, and make sure that I flip this. Now, straight across, 44 over 28. I need to simplify. So let's divide by 2. Okay, so 44 cut in half is 22, and 28 divided by 2 is 14. I still see two even numbers, so let's divide by 2 again. All right, I have 11/7. And 11/7, now I can't divide by 2 or 3 or anything else. Both of those numbers are prime, so nothing's going to go into them except themselves. But this is an improper fraction, so I want to fix my answer. So I'm going to put my answer up here. So 7 goes into 11 one time, and then you have 4 left over. So my answer should be 1 4/7. Now, before we move on, I want to go back to right here. So if we have 11/4 times 4 times 7, let's rewrite that and try it a different way. So the first time we did it, we just multiplied straight across. We got these somewhat large numbers, and then we had to do all this simplifying to get down to 11/7 and then convert it. Now this simplifying wasn't too difficult, but it takes a couple steps, and realistically, the more steps we have, the more chance there is we make a mistake. So if we can eliminate the steps, we can save ourselves some silly mistakes sometimes. So when I'm looking at this multiplication problem, what I can do is I can look at the diagonals, and if there's something that I see that simplifies, I can do it ahead of time and save myself these steps. So the 11 and the 7 you can't do anything with, but the 4 and the 4 can both be divided by 4. So if I divide this by 4, it becomes a 1, and if I divide this by 4, it becomes a 1. So just like if it was 4/4, 4/4 is equal to 1/1. That's all I did here. So I simplified it like 4/4 was a fraction. Now if I multiply straight across, I'm going to get 11/7, just like I did here. And then I would convert it the same way. and it's 1 4/7. So I saved myself a couple steps by simplifying early, which in the long run, sometimes not only does it make my life easier, but it eliminates the chance to make some mistakes. Okay, we're going to try number 6. So what I want you to do, and I'll tell you go, is pause the video and try number 6 and see how you do. And then after you've tried the problem, press play again, and then watch me do the problem, and then see how close or how far you were from getting it right. So go ahead and pause the video. Okay, so hopefully you've attempted number 6 now. Let's see how you did. So first thing I need to do is I need to convert these into improper fractions. So 1 times 3 is 3. Add it to the top. That's 5/3. 1 times 2 is 2. Add it to the top. And that's 3/2. All right, so I have 5/3 divided by 3/2. I don't want to divide, so I'm going to rewrite this as 5/3 times, and I have to flip. So as soon as I change division to multiplication, I have to flip. So this becomes 2/3. So divided by 3/2 is the same as times 2/3. This is easy to do. So I'm going to get 10 on top, and I'm going to get 9 on the bottom. Now, when you got here, you probably were looking to use this tool over here, this simplify early, which is good. You want to look for it, but you weren't able to find anything because 3 and 2 don't simplify and 3 and 5 don't simplify. So that means there is no early simplifying on this problem. You just have to go straight across. So I get 10/9. 9 goes into 10 once, with 1 left over. Okay, so go ahead and look back and see if you didn't get 1 1/9, where was your mistake? And hopefully you can notice that in the future and avoid that mistake as you work on these the rest of the day today and moving forward. So what I want you to do is I want you to flip this page over, and you're going to try these 6 problems. Okay, 7 through 12. You try them. There's an answer key posted on the Weebly right above this video so that you can check your answers. If you're not getting the right answers, flip it back over and compare them. Because if you look at number 7, it's very similar to number 1. And then if you look at number 8, it kind of matches up with 2. And same thing with the bottom questions. They're very similar. So if you're struggling on these, flip it back over to your notes and look at the procedures that we went through on this side. And that's going to help you try these 6. If you get all 6 of these right, let me know. I'll come over and I can get you your homework. And if you need help on any of these, if the notes is not enough, then just raise your hand and I will come over there.